Welcome, everybody. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to my colleague, Kriya Coleman from the University of Sydney, who is going to take us through a very interactive and fascinating presentation on using generative AI. I will hand over to Kriya to describe herself, but welcome, everybody, and make yourselves comfortable.
Thank you, Sarah. So my name is Kriya. I am of Irish, Scottish, English extraction. I'm a tall woman and I'm wearing black pants and a white top and a colourful scarf. Thank you for joining me today. I want to start out by saying that I am not really an expert in AI, but I'm a user of AI. And I am part of a wonderful team at the University of Sydney called Educational Innovation, where we are working very hard at deploying universal design for learning. So my session today is going to give us an opportunity to workshop with some AI tools, experiment with them, test them out a little bit, and I'll give you a little bit of background before we jump into that. Of course.
All things, hi, for those who don't know me, I'm Darlene, and all things, we tried to plan for. We have got external captioners, but we haven't been able to get them to link with our team, so I do apologise for the initial session with the poor captioning. If you want or need captioning, you can do an external captioning. The caption link is up on the whiteboard and hopefully you can see it. So that's Bradley reporting .1capp.com/event/stream2. So if you need captioning that you don't want just the automatic captioning, which should have started by now. Sorry, the auto captionings should, yep. Okay. Okay, all right. So hopefully, yeah, through those two, we'll get there. So bear with it. Thank you.
Thanks. The auto captioning might be my fault because I'm presenting from Menti. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands where I live and work, the Camaragal of the Darug Nation and the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, and also acknowledge that today we're here on Wiradjuri lands. And I accept the invitation in the Uluru Statement from the heart more now than ever, and I'm committed to contributing to a better future for Australia. So I think probably we're all on the similar page when it comes to wanting to see more inclusivity in the way that we design educational experiences. Okay, I've got to go here. This is better. Now I'm in the spotlight. So some of the things that we have been thinking about, gosh, I don't know where to stand now. I'm sorry, I'm standing right in front of the slides. We know in our workplace that we've made a fair journey in some pockets of the organisation, but we've still got a ways to go in terms of making sure that education is more inclusive. We also know that a one-size-fits-most approach is just teaching to the middle and is probably not doing what it needs to do in terms of making sure that people at margins are able to access the educational experiences at Sydney University. And I guess the other thing that is something that we talk about quite a lot is finding flexible ways for people to engage in learning, whether that be in the classroom or in assessment or in any of the aspects of university life. So with all of that in mind, today what I'm interested in doing is sharing with you some artificial intelligence agents that we can experiment with. And I say experiment because they are experimental. Two of them are ones that we've designed ourselves. And the third one is perhaps being more widely used internationally. But it's going to be an opportunity to play with these as a tool or a mechanism for increasing our academics' awareness of how they might approach designing more inclusive educational experiences. Before we do that, though, I think it's a worthwhile opportunity to just test the waters in terms of how we're feeling about generative AI. How do we feel about it in our educational context? So I have a little Menti, and there's that moment where I think, gosh, I hope these codes all work. I'm going to just move up here because that might stop the feedback a bit. And I don't have the lights in my eyes. So the Menti is just an opportunity for us to have a think about where we're at with AI and how it's impacting the way that we are starting to think about diversity and inclusion. So has anybody had any issues getting in? Oh, Lord. Okay, I'm sorry. See? Okay, it's all right. I'm a teacher who uses technology, can't you tell? All right, so we're on this page. It's interesting, while you're thinking about that, I work with a number of academics, and one in particular does a really good job of introducing AI in her classroom, and she polls her students, and the responses to her polls over the last 9 months or so have changed significantly. From, oh no, we don't touch that. Oh no, that's scary. Don't want to have a bar of it. Wouldn't want to admit that I'm using AI. To today, yep, using it all the time. Happy, excited, curious, a little bit concerned, but generally feeling quite positive about AI in their classrooms. And it looks like we also feel curious and excited, which is good. And I think having a little bit of an edge of uncertainty is also good when it comes to AI. As I said, I'm not an AI expert, I'm an AI user. So I do have I guess, a little hint of cynicism. Wary, hesitant, all good things. And it's a good crutch. Yes, I like that. I use it as a tool to help me as well. Okay, my next question is, are you using AI already? Or to what extent are you using AI? I think if I'd done this 6 months ago, we probably would have got quite different responses. And today I think we're all there now. Like, okay, I have to fess up with this. I have to use it. I have to give it a go. And I listened recently to an interesting conversation on, I think it's called The Minefield on Radio National, where they talked about the concerns and fears about what AI will mean in our educational space. So yes, I do feel a little bit uncomfortable too. So I think we need to really think hard about how and when we utilise AI in the classroom and what we're doing with it. So thank you. Okay, this one's just an open response. What are you using it for? I use it for improving my drafting, sometimes helping me come up with ideas, so a bit of a brainstorming tool. I'm doing quite a bit of researching stuff at the moment, and it doesn't help me with the research very much. That you have to do that the old school way, but it does help me collect those ideas and massage them into an early draft that I can then really refine thoughtfully. I like that there's some understanding content. I know students are using AI for exactly that. I think there's lots of potential for using AI to help us summarize readings that we want students to engage with so that we can give them an easy entry into the critical work that we want them to dive deeply into. Sam? Oh yeah, and I was going to click the space bar and I was going to group them. Oh, I'm so high tech. Educational innovation. And now you're going to tell me to scroll and I don't know how. Oh, see, now I've just gone on to the next question. I really don't know what I'm doing next. You know, part of the problem is that I need to put glasses on to be able to do the close work. There we go. Thank you, Sarah. And if I press space again, it'll get more. Oh no, oh, jeepers. Can you scroll up again for me, Sarah? Thank you. It's a team. It takes a team. No, it's all right. Don't worry. I'm glad to see that lots of people are using it in lots of different ways. And it's interesting for us to be able to reflect on how we're using AI, because I think that gives us a little bit of insight into how students, who are probably perhaps a few steps ahead of us, are using AI in their learning. So what I wanted to do now, I'm going to keep going, is just to get on the table some of the concerns. And I think we probably are fairly thoughtful about what things are going to present us with in terms of challenges in terms of AI in the classroom. Ethics, privacy. I was mentioning before that I work with a colleague who is teaching in the occupational therapy space. And one of the first activities she did with her students was to introduce the ethical use of AI and ask her students what that meant. So what do you think ethical use of AI is going to mean as an occupational therapist? Because she could foresee 12 months ago that occupational therapists in the future would be actively using AI in their practice. So maybe she needs to start creating ethical AI users. And I'll do this again. Too many tricks in my bag. Well, there's lots of concern. So privacy. And I know in some of the conversations I'm having with academics about assessment, plagiarism is certainly a concern. Just, you know, they look it up on AI now instead of Google and copy paste. This one is really interesting. I know my first response was, whoa, if it can do all that, what's the point of me? Hopefully there's more value in me than what it does. Unreliability, yes, absolutely. Yeah, intellectual property. I can't recommend enough that you go and listen to that minefield episode. Definitely biases, yes. Ethics, ethical concerns. Yeah, and I acknowledge dependency. My first go-to now is, oh, what's AI going to tell me? So yes. Okay. So today, oh yes. So we need to, sorry, yes.
I think this one's on. Yep. I was just going to ask, is Menti using AI here to categorize these responses? Okay.
I'm thinking, I should have known that, but yes. Yes, I'm sure it is. Just like Instagram has AI looking at everything I'm doing and fixing my algorithms for me. And it is, yeah, I hadn't. Thank you for acknowledging that. Yes. I'm sorry, I've got to move. I'm going. Okay, I'm human. All right, so what I wanted to do is tell you a little bit about the background to two of the agents that we're going to look at today. So at Sydney University, I work with a brilliant colleague. His name is Danny Liu. Danny is exceptional. And about 2 years ago, Danny foresaw that AI was coming and that we needed to be thinking about it. And his perspective on AI was to develop this thing called Cogniti. And Cogniti is like a front end or a skin over the top of ChatGPT 4 or whatever ChatGPT edition that we choose to use. And it means that when we are using Cogniti, it's like we're playing inside a playground fence. So what we're putting into the Cogniti agent stays inside our little playground fence, but it draws from outside the playground from ChatGPT 4 or whatever version you're using. So Cogniti is a Sydney University tool, but I think we are sharing it very widely. There is a, in the presentation later, there is a link where you can go to a website called cogniti.ai and find out a little bit more background. The important thing to know about Cogniti, though, is that it was developed for a number of reasons. And some of those reasons are that it gives everybody at Sydney Uni equitable access to ChatGPT or the latest version of ChatGPT. So we don't have to pay for it. The university is paying for it for us. That means that all of our students and our teachers can have equity in their ability to use this powerful tool. The other thing that it does is enable us to create steerable and informed agents that perform specific functions. So it's not like you're just chatting with the Wild West ChatGPT. You're chatting with an agent that does something in particular. And typically that means it's going to be doing something for a teacher in a classroom or for a teacher behind the scenes. And today what we're going to do is have a look at two agents that we've developed that are informed by universal design for learning principles and our approach to assessment design in the age of AI. And then there's a third agent that we stumbled across that I have played around with a little bit and I feel like is a pretty good tool as well. So it's not ours, it's an internationally available AI agent called Ludia. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about those. The two agents that we developed are underpinned by a process that we follow, which helps us to have conversations with academics about UDL, and we refer to it as designing for diversity. So what we're doing is talking with our academic colleagues about the diversity in their cohort and getting them to think about who their learners are and what that means in terms of the way they design their learning activities or their assessments. And so some of the questions we're asking our academic colleagues are, who are my learners? What's the learning goal for this particular activity that I'm thinking about? What are the potential barriers that the learners might be experiencing? And those barriers might be physical barriers in a classroom, but they could be barriers in the learning management system or barriers that are unique to some students, but all students might benefit from the changes that we make in response to those barriers. And then we ask our academic colleagues, sometimes in collaboration with us, to think about, well, how can we remove those barriers? How can we reduce the impact of those barriers? And then very much part of our story is how are we going to go back, look at what difference it made and how we can iterate those improvements moving forward. So we're having lots of interesting conversations within programs where one academic might try something and that feeds into some other work with his or her academic colleagues. So it's an iterative process. It's a great conversation to be having with our academic colleagues and hopefully it's making some big improvements. So this is the process that sits behind two of the agents that we'll look at. So as I mentioned, there are three agents in total, and I'm going to give you a little bit more background about each of them. And then what we're going to do in groups is have a look at those agents, play with them a little bit, and then feed back to everybody some of the things that you discovered while you're playing with them. So the first one is, I'm going to skip that. The first one is our Designing for Diversity agent. So in terms of the instructions to this agent or the system prompt that we've given this agent, we have told it that it is an expert in universal design for learning and that the users of this agent will be educators, people who are teaching in a higher education context, and they're interested in improving the learning experience of their diverse cohort. And the agent is informed, in this case, to be a supportive coach, which means that the conversation that you'll have with this agent is a very backwards and forwards conversation. So it's there to, it's going to ask you questions and it's going to give you some things to think about and then ask further questions of it. So it's backwards and forwards. There's also two ways that you can engage with this agent. So the first thing it's going to ask you is, do you want a quick fix, which is option 2? Do you need to get there fast? Or would you like to do a bit of a deep dive and really just think about things as they unfold in the conversation? So you've got two pathways to follow. So that's the first agent. And I think what the conversations that come from this agent are similar to the conversations that we might have with our academic colleagues. So we're just spreading our reach a little bit, really. The second agent is very similar. It has similar system prompting, but this time the agent is specifically thinking about assessment design as opposed to learning in a classroom or any other online learning or anything like that. It's just about assessment. And at Sydney University, we have been thinking about what assessment policy means in the time of AI. There are some really interesting articles on the Teaching at Sydney blog about where we're at in that thinking. And at the moment, we are really acknowledging that assessment falls into one of two categories. Lane one is that assured. We know that the thing that we are assessing is coming straight from the student to us. It's an assured assessment. And that really narrows down what types of assessment fall into that category. Things like pen and paper exams or viva voces or interactive orals, you know, they're assured. And everything else then sits over in our lane two. And that means that we know that in lane two, those assessments may or will have AI as part of that assessment process. And I think we're heading more towards will have AI as part of that assessment process. Whether you've designed that into the assessment or whether you've just ignored AI and students are using it anyway. So we've got two lanes of assessment, and the AI agent in this case, the Cogniti agent in this case, is thinking about those two lanes. It's part of the conversation that it will have with you. Again, there's two options for interaction. Do you want a deep dive or do you want a quick response? And the third example that we're going to look at today is Ludia. Now, Ludia has been developed by some UDL experts. There is a great podcast that I listened to once one of my colleagues shared Ludia with us. The podcast was really good. You get to meet who the creators are. And this agent specifically speaks to the UDL framework and all of the dot points. So it's reinforcing your use of the UDL framework. I haven't seen anything about whether or not they're updating Ludia with the new revised framework that's coming, but I would imagine they are because they're UDL practitioners. So we have three agents that we're going to play with. I did want to say one more thing though. Oh, sorry, this is about Ludia. It's going to have, I don't really know about its system prompt. I don't know what they've asked it to do. I presume they've asked it to do this stuff. And it will start by interacting with you and asking you questions as well. And it has some great, really deep dive opportunities. So it'll say, do you want to know more? Do you want to know more? Do you want to know more? So it's great. Plus it's connecting you with the UDL framework. All right, so now I've done something similar with academics at UCID before, and sometimes the response was, oh, well, it didn't really give me what I wanted. I think the thing to know, and I think you probably already know this, the thing to know about AI is that the better your input, the stronger or the more valuable the response that you'll get. So if you ask it superficial questions, it's really guessing about what it is that you want to understand. So the more information you give, or the more precise the descriptions you provide, the better the solutions or the options that it provides you with will be. So I'd really, you need to be thinking critically while you engage with the agent, all three of them. Does anyone have any questions?
Any of them multimodal, or are they all just text?
Yeah, at the moment they're text-based. My understanding from Danny is that the speech to text and speaking back is coming very, very soon, but it's not here yet. So we're at the mercy of generative of ChatGPT. When it's available, it'll be available to us too. So yes, that is a limitation. Yes.
I can see how was it Ludia? I can see how that one, if it's connected to information about a UDL framework, that might be different to something like ChatGPT if ChatGPT doesn't have that information. But how is Cogniti different to using ChatGPT if you were to contextualize your prompt with assessment or with UDL?
So yes, you're right. If you tell ChatGPT that I need you to act like a UDL expert or like an educational expert in designing for a diverse cohort, then it will do what you want it to do. I guess what we have the ability to do in Cogniti is to be very, I guess, put parameters around the way the agent works and what it doesn't do. So it saves a little bit of time. Yeah, so it's in that sense, it's not particularly genius. I think keeping in mind that the purpose of Cogniti is to equalize and create steerable agents. Later on, if you want to find out more about some of the other agents that are classroom specific, then you get into this prompting that says this agent won't do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So you can not only steer the agent, you can prevent the agent from, to an extent, from doing things you don't want students to do when they're interacting with it. Yes.
Just following from that, is part of what you can tell it not to do just give horribly biased content, or is it still at the mercy of the kind of crap on the web? Okay, just checking. I was kind of wishful thinking, but yeah, we will. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. It's still dependent on ChatGPT. So yes, it's not going to be perfection. Damn. Yes. But it's, I think when you put in good parameters and then you challenge what you get as a first response or a second response, it improves.
You mentioned that Cogniti is available more broadly than UCIT. How would one get access to that? Is it something we request? Or?
Yes, so if you go to Cogniti AI, you will find a way to access the Sydney University freely available versions. And I might come back to that so that we can get into the workshopy part. And I'm happy to talk more later because I'm having fun with it and I'm sure other people want to too. Okay, so we have 3 agents that we're going to play with, and I'm going to arbitrarily assign you. I know that's uncomfortable. I'm going to arbitrarily assign you to an agent. So I was just thinking that the front row, could you all use Cogniti Designing for Diversity? And could the middle row all use the Cogniti Assessment agent? And the back row, could you use Ludia? So the plan here is to, I'm just going to hand around a piece of paper to make this a bit easier. Oh dear, I've gone too far. No, I haven't. The plan is to have each of the groups experiment with one of the 3 agents and then share your comments to a Padlet. The Padlet is on the back of the piece of paper that's coming around, as well as on here. That way we're getting a bit of a collective resource for what we discovered as we were interacting with the agents. And I think it probably will take you about 5 or 10 minutes just to get in there and have a play, test it out with your own context, see how it responds to your particular circumstances, your educational context. And you'll see that, so the front row here is doing Designing for Diversity Cogniti, the middle row is doing the Assessment Design Cogniti, and the back row is doing Ludia. So if you take that QR code that's on this page here, that should take you, oh, okay. So there was one more step that so the Cogniti ones, you can log in either with your Microsoft login if you have a Microsoft login through work, or you can log in through the Australian Education Foundation. I'm mumbling that because I'm not quite sure what the words are. It's the top one, the top option. And then you pick your university. So it's basically, what is it, Sam? That. So if you use that one, you'll log in through your own organisation, or you can log in through Microsoft. Both work really well. Did anybody not get in? And my helpers might help. So I've got my glasses on. Okay. So you're into the Padlet, but now you'll need to go into this one as well. I'm coming back. I'm just getting glasses. So that's the Padlet, and then on that side is the yeah, the Padlet. Yeah, that's right. But you need to get into the agent first or after.
So I think that's this one first.
Yes. So that's the debrief Padlet. And yeah, that's the one. I think you just picked up the wrong one. Show me what you got. Yeah, you're in. Now you just have a conversation. So you're in the designing the diversity agent, it's telling you about who it is. And down here you're saying, I'd like to use public one. Got in, that's all. How did you go? Excellent. How did you go?
Are we doing the Swift solution or the island?
You pick whatever works for you. And okay. And so, you take a photo of that one, and I'll just go flip it.
I got it.
You know what I sometimes use it for? Like when I'm writing comments about AP and to help rationalise it properly.
I put an option. The bit I wasn't sure about was whether to actually type. I found it.
Yeah. I mean, I think like sometimes you know why something should be a certain way, but I've used it to help.
Yeah,
Right.
right. It's taking
The right
Like
word.
it's going to be a drop
You know, and using the
field. So I'll just see what happened and then there's no drop downs. It's not that sophisticated.
yeah,
But start.
yeah. And you kind of do it quickly as well. You don't want to spend too much time saying why, you know, something should be done a certain way, but then I find that really helps to be like, say it in the words that I mean, that I'm not very good at. Really helpful.
It's a bit like
I think it's still very new.
I mean, I like to do because you're wanting to give people information, maybe to make new
Yeah.
The designing capacity is more of Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that would be interesting to try as well. Yeah.
We're doing today, right? Yes, if I did it, sometimes I think it would be good if they for a variety of reasons. That aren't
Want to get into it, yeah.
Everything else. Can I just, your picture, no, you're not allowed. Yeah, there's missing, yeah. Is that a device? No, that's that's not fair, is it? I don't understand. Done. I'll be the canary in the coal mine. Yes. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I started using it. I think I heard it mentioned on the podcast. Okay. And I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And yeah, it's been really good. Just, I think for ideas, and as you were saying before, like, you know, I know, I mean, I don't know it off by heart, but I am familiar with the UDL matrix, but I often find it's a lot to take in. And so it really helps just get what you need. Yeah, and also I think learning about UDL as well, because there's a lot to know, although the basic, you know, fundamentals are, you know, easy enough, but then knowing the ins and outs of it, it just, because you're using it as you need it. So whoever gets this inquiry, getting the information we need at the time, and then learning. Well, it's been really helpful. And I like that it's because I'm a future school, not packages. So I play with other AI. Specifically, it's my subject. I've been built especially for this.
On site of people that have this, you know, you now just inclusive of some sort of like to see how any packages in the med system should actually
Reach out, I might not be the next person to talk to.
maybe
Yes, so like,
You know, sometimes we work so quickly putting
terms of
content
that,
together that you don't have time.
He's our expert.
okay. So is it okay if I take a photo of your car?
About that, but it's very quick. Even if you don't take in.
So I didn't want to just reach out. Yes, but we are here today to actually just start promoting
activity,
you know,
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I can see that everyone's having some really interesting conversations. Can I remind you that it'd be great if we could capture some of your thoughts about the agent that you're looking at on the Padlet. I know there were lots of QR codes, but I couldn't work out a better way to do this. So the Padlet is where I'd really like to capture what you discovered, your feedback about one of the agents. You're welcome, once you've had a play with one agent, if you want to switch over and play with one of the other agents, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But don't forget to go to the Padlet. I know that there's some really rich conversations happening at the tables. Just want to remind you, we've got 5 minutes left. I want to remind you to pop your thoughts onto the Padlet, because that way we are sharing across all the tables, and hopefully some of the conversations that you're having get shared with the other table groups. And then finally, death by QR code. I have one more, and this is for where we can just universally share our thoughts about AI as an assistant in the work that you do. I mentioned that what we at Sydney Uni, we refer to them as agents, but I think assistant is a better word. Sometimes the agents we develop are for teachers. They're agents that, you know, help teachers do some of the grunt work is the word. That's the one I'm looking for. Yeah, maybe it's grudging too. Some of that grunt work, like writing rubrics and writing multiple choice questions and learning outcomes and all of that sort of thing. We've got agents that are for teachers, but the agents that are really exciting are the agents that have been developed by teachers for their students. And I was talking with a group down here about some of those interesting use cases to just use in the classroom to assist with student learning. So I'm asking you, I guess, more broadly, do you think these agents that we've played with might be useful to support the work that you do with your colleagues? And also, if you've come across other UDL-inspired agents, this is another great place that you can share that. I do have a couple of slides that I'll just pop up now, which summarise some of the other ways that we're using. Oh, no, there you go. That's the thing I thought I didn't have. I'd be interested to understand I'll go back and look at the Padlet, obviously, but I'm interested to hear your feedback about the Cogniti agents, because a number of us have worked on prompting those agents, and we are constantly looking at how we can refine and improve. One of the benefits of using Cogniti is that you can look under the hood and see the interactions that people have had with your agent, not who they are, but see the conversation that they've had. And that gives us a way of looking at, you know, where the agent isn't quite doing what it needs to do. So another advantage of using something like Cogniti is that you create this bespoke agent and then you refine it and improve it, depending on how users are interacting with it. As I said, I don't know what the evolution of Ludia will be, but I imagine that they will be evolving that one too with the new framework that's coming. So thank you very much for your feedback. I want to just quickly pop up a couple of other examples of the way that we're using Cogniti, and I've got 1 minute left. So this is just a list of some of the agents that we've created across the university. So they're in all different disciplines. Some of them are generic and are available to academics to plug into their course. So for example, the group work coach is a coach that helps students who are doing group work and saves them having to go and whinge to their teacher incessantly about how someone's not doing the right thing in their group. The writing coach is a fairly obvious one too. We have students from all different educational, language and cultural backgrounds, and sometimes they need support in just helping improve their writing skills. Mrs. S is a classroom teacher. She gives OT students some feedback like a teacher. Yes.
So are you using Canvas LMS?
Yes.
Okay. So if you've got in one of the Canvas courses, what are multiple agents integrated? Yeah, so that's a really good question. At the moment, you know, this was developed in-house at Sydney Uni, and we are Canvas users. And Cogniti has been set up for us as an LTI. So you would embed the agent on a page, and you would explain to the students the purpose of the agent and how you want them to interact with the agent. And then they'd go down the bottom of the page and they'd find the agent for the chat. Coming.
Sorry to make you walk around. Okay. I love all these student-facing agents, but I'm really curious how students engaging with these student-facing agents impacts their work when it's run through an AI detection thing like Turnitin.
That's a great question. At Sydney Uni, we don't do AI detection because we have decided that the AI detection is not really adequately performing its function and is flagging things that may or may not be AI generated. We're also using these agents in a classroom context or in a drafting context. Our policy at the moment says that students must disclose their use of, or they must acknowledge their use of AI and how they use the AI. And a lot of these agents, the student-facing agents, have been instructed not to do other work. So the writing coach will look at a sample of writing, but it won't do any writing. It will give the student feedback on the piece of writing they've done, and that's it. There are other agents. The mentor bot is one that gives feedback on a specific type of writing in occupational therapy, and so it does give them, it's informed about the type of writing, and it does give them feedback. I don't think it also might be limited to not doing work for students. There are students all the time, though, try to crack it. So the nature of the game.
I was just going to say, I think for formative assessment, it's much more used, and even pre-formative assessments. A lot of my students are already using Grammarly for years, so it's no rocket science. I think the second language learners are just cracking on at all levels in a really useful way. And there's co-curricular, the will practice for interviews and all those kinds of things. I think those are really hugely promising. Yeah.
I think that's it. Grammarly's existed for a long time. This is just our bespoke version. Yeah. And then, of course, I mentioned that we have agents that do things for teachers. So these have actually been a really good way of opening the door to AI for teachers who are like, no, not going there. But once they have a go with some of these tools, they go, oh, okay, show me a bit more. And then we have that deeper conversation about, well, how could AI be helpful to you? How could it duplicate some of the activities that you need to have done in the classroom? The ones that are done, so my colleague Jo Heinert, who is the occupational therapy academic, she uses the agents in the classroom with her 120 students in a big situation like this. And I happened to go to her classroom a few times, and we walk around and we talk to students. What's it telling you? How's it going? Do you agree? Do you think you need to ask it a bit more? A few more questions. So it's a classroom tool as much as anything, but not necessarily an asynchronous tool. I'm very conscious of time. Thank you all very much for participating. I hope that was thought-provoking. As I said, I'm not the AI expert, but I'm a practitioner and a teacher, and I love playing with it. So thank you very much for joining me.